Okay, your minutes are on the back of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to go over those that's got them? Are there any additions or corrections? If not, co-chair moves approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion carries. First item on the agenda, legislation needed to enhance state economic development of remote air mobility. First up, we have Colonel retired Sean Frisbee, U.S. Air Force, president of Vertex Partners. And come up here. Yeah, if you just come up here to the podium.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a great lunch. I saw Gordon Gee downstairs, and Gordon said, "What's up with the shirt, this orange shirt?" And I said, well, you know, being the former president and CEO of the WVU Alumni Association, some people think that I only love WVU. In fact, I don't. I love Marshall and Tech and State and Charleston and all the other higher education institutions. So I didn't want to wear blue and gold for fear that y'all might think that I'm just here to support the efforts going on here at WVU. And these are our new company's colors. So a little bit about myself. Sean Frisbee, I'm a graduate of WVU, aerospace engineering back in the 80s. I did a career in the U.S. Air Force and came back to Morgantown in 2015. So about 7 years ago, I had the great honor of coming back and leading the Alumni Association here for 6 years. And then I got a call from Air Force Research Labs, and they asked if I would consider joining them and helping drive more technology development, locating small businesses, entrepreneurs in West Virginia and Appalachia. And so I left the Alumni Association last June and started Vertex Partners, and that is really our core mission, is helping the U.S. Air Force solve their challenges and doing so right here in West Virginia and across Appalachia. And one of the areas that we believe that West Virginia can play a leading role is in advanced air mobility. And to give you a kind of a definition, because the industry is large, it can be confusing. Advanced air mobility is the transportation of goods and essential services and people via drones and eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And this industry is really exploding, and it is here. We're on the cusp of a whole new method of air transportation. This group, and I want to say thank you for the steps that you took in this last session with House Bill 4667 in creating the Uncrewed Aircraft Systems Advisory Council for the state. This is vitally important for West Virginia to place itself in a leading role in advanced air mobility, this new industry that is really launching big time now. And it certainly put West Virginia on the radar nationally. As to a state that is interested in supporting this industry, wanting to participate in this industry, and helping to drive this industry. And I thank you very much for your leadership in doing that. There's some estimates out there, and the numbers are all over the place, but the economists are expecting this industry to exceed $115 billion by 2035. A recent study done in Ohio by Crown Consulting Group estimated in Ohio a $13 billion industry over the next 25 years. Many of you might have seen the Anderson Cooper episode on 60 Minutes, where Anderson actually got into a vehicle built by Joby and was flying. And they were talking about how this is really moving. Y'all have seen that FedEx, Google, UPS, many of the large transportation companies are putting billions of dollars into this industry in order to build aircraft that are going to be able to deliver these services and goods. The technology is moving very, very fast, and it has been for some time. I've actually been involved in the drone business for a long time, dating back to 1999, 2000, when we first put the Hellfire missile on Predator. And that was before the Afghanistan war launched, and we had never shot a munition off of a drone. And thankfully, we did that before Afghanistan launched, and you all have seen the videos and understand the importance of that. So I've been involved in the industry for some time, involved in the industry on the commercial side as well. The Air Force has a program called Agility Prime. And Agility Prime is designed to really focus on the movement of people and what the Air Force calls orbs. And what they tell me is there's over 200 companies right now that have these vehicles in development. Joby is the first one to gain airworthiness certification to be flying. What's really interesting is in the last month, the latest budget documents have come out on the federal side. And what we've seen is we saw in FY22 a doubling of the budget for Agility Prime. So now it's up to $111 million for FY22 and $131 million for FY23. Those numbers doubled from a year ago. And so you can see that even the U.S. Air Force is putting significant dollars into this. The technology, as I said, is moving fast. And we like to think about advanced air mobility from the air vehicle standpoint. Many of us have drones. You might be flying drones over your property, taking video and so on and so forth. And you always think about the air vehicle, but it's really a very complex system of systems. So the air vehicles and the technology of the air vehicles are really important. But also what's really important is how we're going to control the airspace. How are we going to manage the low altitude airspace? And it's really complex. Right now, the FAA and our air traffic controllers, they don't manage aircraft below 2,000 feet. And so how are we going to make sure that the helicopters that are flying, the general aviation aircraft that are flying, some of them flying low level, how are we going to make sure that they are safe if we have drones flying around? And this is what has complicated the whole situation with integrating these systems into the national airspace. The U.S. is famous for our safety in aerospace, and that is something that will not be violated. The FAA has been slow in developing regulations. If you've been involved in this industry, you know how slow it's come along. And the reason is because we have to be able to trust these systems. We have to be able to trust that these systems are going to do what we think they're going to do. When you get beyond visual line of sight, you do not have a human on that aircraft in order to make a decision. How are we going to make sure that these systems are actually going to perform the way that we think they're going to perform? And so this idea of autonomy, what happens when a vehicle loses data link, what happens when a vehicle has something happen like an engine go out, a propeller break, how is that vehicle going to act? Because you do not want these vehicles coming down in somebody's backyard, into a schoolyard, and so on and so forth. And so the safety aspects are vitally important. And this is one of the main issues that has really slowed things down with the FAA. We've got to do more testing. We've got to do more testing. We've got to collect more data and make sure that these systems are operating the way that we think they will. Another aspect of this system of systems is social acceptance. Are we going to socially accept that these vehicles are flying over our property? I mean, can you imagine these vehicles flying around West Virginia? I mean, I can hear it now. When you fly that over my farm, I'm going to shoot it out of the sky. And so we've got to market this in a way, and we've got to make sure that the public is accepting the utilization of these vehicles. And I think that many folks may discount that, but I think it's going to be a vital aspect in us being successful in advanced air mobility. And then when you think about the entities that are involved in this, we've got certainly public entities at the federal, at the state, at the local level. We have private companies who are developing technology. We've got nonprofits that are driving entrepreneurship in this area. And then we've got the academics. And the academics are everything from K through 16, in secondary, K through 12, getting students interested in this industry. We're going to need more pilots, a lot more pilots. We're going to need people that control airspace. We're going to need developers and designers. But it's also the arts, because these vehicles are great for filming and things of that sort. And so academics are going to play a huge role. And then at the higher education level, at places like WVU and at Marshall, we've got the Bill No Flight School, of course, at Marshall. And we believe that Marshall can really be a center of excellence for America in training our pilots, training our maintainers for these systems. And then we've got folks here in our engineering department at WVU that are really the leaders in autonomous systems and robotics and things of that sort. And so you've got public, private, nonprofit, academic entities that are involved in this. So this is this really complex system that no one entity owns. No one entity is going to be the leader. There's going to be multiple leaders, and we believe West Virginia can be one of those leaders. Now, NASA really has stepped out and done a good job of leading the nation as we look at the future of advanced air mobility. And they commissioned the National Academy of Sciences in 2020 to build a national blueprint for advanced air mobility for the nation. And one of their observations was that there is not a sufficient amount of test area in the U.S. in order to test these systems so that we can integrate these systems. We can collect the data that we need and integrate these systems into the national airspace. And we took action this year, and in fact, one of the Build Back Better Phase 2 proposals from the Economic Development group at the state level was to answer the call for that, and to design and build a test range in Mingo County at a small general aviation airport called KEBD. And what's really interesting about this is if we can make this happen, this is going to be a one of a kind in the world. And so think about this. Down at KEBD, down in Mingo County, we have low population density, which from an FAA standpoint is perfect, because you want to fly these. If you want to lower the risk of these systems around a test range, you want low population density. We have low airspace density. But what's great about West Virginia, and one of the reasons that West Virginia is a great spot to do this, is we have real terrain. We have mountains and hollers. We've got real weather. We have a really challenging environment to operate these systems. And this is the type of environment that you really need to prove that these systems can operate in these kinds of environments. We don't have 5G everywhere. We don't have broadband everywhere. And guess what? Many, many, many places in the U.S., especially in Appalachia, are just like that. And so we believe that West Virginia is a great location to do this. And that proposal process is still going through, and we're keeping our fingers crossed on that. This would be a great opportunity for West Virginia to take a significant lead if we can win this and we can actually build that range. And you think about the uses in a place like West Virginia. I really believe that rural America has an outsized benefit to be gained with advanced air mobility. Many of our elderly in the rural areas are unable to pick up their pharmaceuticals, for example. And we could be using these systems for delivery of pharmaceuticals. We've been talking to a company called Teladoc and they are partnered with CAMC, and talking to Becky Harless there, and talking about how we can do a use case where we can deliver home health devices to people, to where they can bring those in and they can actually do telemedicine using those devices. Our first responders. This would be a great opportunity in the rural areas for our first responders. Think about when we had our flood several years ago. What a great opportunity to go down and scan that area and figure out, okay, what do we really need down there? Where do we got to get water to? You know, where are those areas that are really isolated right now that you just can't get to? And then, of course, the goods delivery would be great. You know, when you're a place like Washington, D.C., you get same-day delivery from Amazon. When you're in Clay County, West Virginia, you probably get 5-day delivery. And if you think about the cost of it, we're talking to a company in Cincinnati called Workhorse, and Workhorse are building drones to deliver packages, and they're working with FedEx. And FedEx did a study a couple of years ago when gas was $2 a gallon. Okay, when it was $2 a gallon, they were estimating that it's about $1 a mile for those last miles of delivery. And with an electric vehicle, they think they can bring that cost down to 35 cents. And with a drone, they think they can bring it down to 5 cents a mile. And so the economics of it are working, and that's why these companies are putting so much money into advanced air mobility. And West Virginia can certainly be a leader in this. From a legislative standpoint, the most important step has been done. And as the governor creates the advisory council, what I imagine will happen is we'll end up building a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and really focus efforts on what is it that West Virginia can be doing in a very logical way, working very closely with NASA, working very closely with the FAA, working closely with industry partners, and driving this industry in West Virginia. Well, one of the things that I believe that we really need is an economic study. I will tell you the economic study that Ohio did, I think it was 2 years ago, has played a very important role in being able to communicate across the state and across the nation is the impact of this industry to Ohio. And I think we need something like that in West Virginia, and we need that sooner as opposed to later. And a study like that is going to cost about $250,000. You really have to get to a company, a group of consultants that really understand the industry, and it needs to be done very rapidly. We really could use the opportunity in West Virginia to exercise these use cases. I talked about teledoc and talked about first responders. We met with the dean of the Davis School here, and we're talking with folks at the University of Cincinnati about using these systems for wildfires and wildfire research and development. And we're looking for opportunities to bring some of these use cases into West Virginia and demonstrate how these vehicles can be very, very useful in many different ways. And we're looking for funding for that. We're looking at the EDA, some federal funding, and other opportunities with some private industry in order to demonstrate some of these capabilities here in the state. One of the important things that we have in West Virginia, and this is going back to the work that we're doing with the U.S. Air Force and DOD, but it all relates to advanced air mobility, is the support that the state gives to companies who win their first SBIR, their first Small Business Innovation Research Grant from a DOD entity. And right now, that grant money is funded from use of the P card. And it's really important for entrepreneurs, these small businesses come in, if they win their first one, then they're eligible to get some additional money from the state. I would encourage the legislators to consider thinking about an actual line item in the budget for SBIR support. These types of activities are really important for small businesses, and here's why. A small business can win an SBIR a phase one, generally it's $100,000 to $150,000. It's not a tremendous amount of money, but for a new set of entrepreneurs, it's an important amount of money. What's great about this is they own the IP that they develop as a result of the SBIR, and it's non-dilutive money. And so if a company wins a phase one, they're looking at 100 to 150,000. They win a phase two, they're at $1 million. And we've got a great example right here. Two entrepreneurs here at WVU. I introduced them to our partners, Parallax Advanced Research, about 2 years ago. It's Iconic Air. Many of you probably know about Iconic Air. They've now won 2 phase ones, 2 phase twos, and they're on the cusp of a $40 million IDIQ with the U.S. Air Force. And these are 2 brand new graduates that had developed a company. But I would encourage you to think about this, and this will support advanced air mobility. We believe that we could have a tremendous amount of entrepreneurship in this state around advanced air mobility. And so I would consider that. And then I'm really excited about the advisory council to get built and get up and operating. One of the things that we've done over the last 6 months is really pulled together a group, we call it the Coalition of the Willing. Basically, folks across the state that are interested in advanced air mobility. We've been having meetings and we've been getting people together, and that's how we met Senator Swope. Mike Graney said, Sean, you got to call Senator Swope. He's a helicopter pilot. He's going to understand this. And that's how we met. Senator Swope was from that group, and that group just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I imagine that this group will be a very good group for the advisory council to tap into and create working groups and really help West Virginia move this forward. So I've taken up enough time of just talking, but I'd like to open the floor up to questions if I've still got a few minutes. Okay. Any questions?
My partner works in we have a large drum, but studying for the Part 107 drum system to be able to do that. So like one place in West Virginia that has one great sport. How do we get more certification?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, certainly if we are able to build this range down at KEBD, that would be another one, but there's no reason why we can't look to other parts of the state, work with the FAA. I would imagine as the Bill No Flight School really starts engaging more in the unmanned systems, that they'll have something as well. Now it's a little more difficult down at Yeager, right? Because you've got so much commercial traffic that are coming in and out. But that's something that we could take a look at as a group and see what it would take to establish some other centers. You know, it'd be nice to have something in the Eastern Panhandle. It'd be nice to have something up north, you know, down south over in the Lewisburg area as well. Sir. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that the FAA has really struggled with is how do you do that? And here's why it's challenging. When these vehicles are flying autonomously, part of what you're doing is you're using various sensors in order to see where you're at and what's around you. And so if things are being recorded, how do you ensure that that data, okay, is not being able to be accessed? And so cybersecurity gets to be a really big deal as part of this, especially if a vehicle crashes. Are is somebody able to get that data off? And so that's one of the many issues that have to be worked through, is how do you ensure that people are not filming, for example, people's property and then utilizing that in a negative way. And I don't have a good answer for that right now, but that's what goes right to the heart of the public acceptance piece that we're really going to have to work our way through. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, next up, we have Nathan Trail, Director of International State and Local Policy for Supernal, a division of Hyundai Motor Corporation, and we're gonna get you to help me on this. So
No.
he's not on? Okay, he got stuck, okay,
Oh, he's not.
okay. He didn't get on, so we're gonna go to Stephanie Montero, President of FGR Hub.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're live, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Stephanie Montero. I'm the president of FGR Hub, and we represent Nathan Trail of Supernal, a division of Hyundai Motor Group, their air mobility division. Unfortunately, he could not make it today because he is in Europe, but he did wanted me to send his congratulations for being the first state, West Virginia, to pass 2 bills on Veriports and monopolization. So thank you. So technology is rapidly changing the way we live, and no technology offers more potential to revolutionize mobility than advanced air mobility, AAM. AAM leverages electrical vehicle vertical takeoff and landing (eVTOL) aircraft to advance connectivity, promote equity and accessibility, and reduce the current strain on infrastructure and carbon emission. We must take a human-centered approach to mobility solutions. AAM is the path to more accessible, connected, and sustainable future. Safety is our top priority for AAM. For the industry to scale from the public to accept AAM, we must meet vigorous safety standards set by the national CAAs for aircraft pilots and operations. So now the CAA is it's just like as we have FAA, which is our national aviation regulator, the international countries have CAA, it's the Civil Aviation Authority. AAM will provide a sustainable mobility solution, leveraging electric propulsion. The infrastructure will also rely on renewable energy, and adoption will help lower carbon emission and reduce congestion. Traditional aviation has left many groups behind, including people living in rural areas, but AAM can and must play an important role in righting these historical wrongs. Public infrastructure funding is the best way to ensure equity and accessibility across AAM. The AAM market will significantly contribute to workforce development by adding over 280,000 high-paying jobs in the U.S. by 2035. These jobs in turn could contribute to 30 million in wages and benefits in 2035 and 8 billion in tax revenue. The long-term commitment to AAM is we want to build a human-centered city.
Stephanie, can we get you to hold up for a second? We're having issues with the audio on our end. So if we'll just bear with us there and the committee be at ease for a moment. Stephanie, you want to go ahead and try it again there?
Can you hear me?
Good? Good? All right, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Should I just start over?
start over. Yes, please.
Okay, sorry. Well, I'm
Thank you.
Stephanie Montero. Oh, no, thank you. Unfortunately, sorry I couldn't make it. My flight was canceled last night, so I am stuck in DC. But I am Stephanie Montero. We do represent Nathan Trail, who is from Supernal. It's a division of the Hyundai Motor Group that deals with AAM. And Nathan also just wanted me to mention that in Amsterdam Drone Week, which was a few months ago, that West Virginia was mentioned for passing these two bills, and it's the largest drone unmanned aviation trade show in Europe. So congratulations and thank you. So AAM, Advanced Air Mobility. So technology is rapidly changing the way we live, and no technology offers more potential to revolutionize mobility than AAM. So AAM leverages electrical vertical takeoff and landing eVTOL aircrafts to enhance connectivity, promote equity, accessibility, and reduce the carbon strain on infrastructure and carbon emission. So we must take a human-centered approach to mobility solutions. AAM is the path to more accessible, connected, and sustainable future. So safety is our top priority for AAM, for the industry to scale, and for the public to accept AAM. We must meet vigorous safety standards set by CAA for the aircraft, pilot, and operations. So CAA is just like how we have FAA, but CAA is the international countries have, so it's the Civil Aviation Authority. AAM will provide a sustainable mobility solution leveraging electric propulsion. The infrastructure will also rely on renewable energy. AAM adoption will help lower carbon emission and reduce congestion. Traditional aviation has left many groups behind, including people living in rural areas, but AAM can and must play an important role in righting these historical wrongs. Public infrastructure funding is the best way to ensure equity and accessibility across AAM. So AAM market will significantly contribute to workforce development by adding 280,000 high-paying jobs in the US by 2035. These jobs, in turn, could contribute to 30 billion in wages and benefits by 2035, and about 80 billion in tax revenue. Long-term commitment to AAM, we want to build a human-centered city that leverage innovation, mobility solutions, and technology advancements to deliver affordable and universal mobility services. So by focusing on how technology will impact humans and designing to meet their needs. So focusing on the people and not the business. So AAM infrastructure development of Veriports. Significant investments in infrastructure is needed to enable the industry, in which why we are advocating for public-private funding for the development of AAM infrastructure. We are working with the National Business Aviation Association, that's NBAA, and other industry stakeholders to develop an advocate for the DOT AAM infrastructure development grant program for state, local, and tribal governments. We will work with the government and community stakeholders to ensure the benefits of this technology are available to all communities, including rural and traditionally underserved communities. We are also committed to developing a competitive and thriving AAM marketplace and ecosystem. Our priorities in creating AAM ecosystem align with West Virginia's future of mobility and policy priorities. West Virginia has passed more enabling state legislation than any other state and is a leader in walking AAM operations and investment. AAM and association infrastructure will rely on green renewable energy, which will help the state to embrace and lead the way in sustainable energy. We are building an equitable form of transportation, which will have more in common with a subway system than an exclusive mode of transportation for the elite. AAM should be available to everyone and not just the wealthy few. Veriports can also grant access to remote or difficult areas and communities. With an estimated 280,000 jobs in 2035, the AAM workforce can represent about 8% of Americans' A&D workforce. Utilizing and transit routes will reduce the current strain on roads and rail lines. So in 2022, West Virginia had passed two bills and established as a state leader in AAM. So House Bill HB 4827 and House Bill 4667. So what's next? Well, 22 created a foundation for enabling AAM in West Virginia. Long-term implementation will rely on creating ongoing mechanisms for engagement between government, industries, and communities. West Virginia's Uncrewed Aircraft System Advisory Council should be used as an ongoing forum for collaboration so that policies can be developed as AAM technology evolves. We will seek workforce development opportunities and programs with local schools and universities. Investments in infrastructure and battery energy development should be encouraged and funded. Partners with local stakeholders such as Marshall University and Yeager Airport. And test sites and facilities should be developed to evaluate AAM's operations specific to West Virginia's future mobility and needs and unique geography. Thank you.
Questions for Stephanie? Questions? I'm seeing no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's for final presenters or any other business come before the committee? He couldn't make it. Yeah, it was an invitation is how that was. Yeah. So no other business announcements? Motion?
To adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Stay here.